Welcome once again. I am your host, Harshit Sinha, returning after a week-long pause from our ongoing SDG series. This brief intermission became necessary in light of the sudden and sweeping policy developments unfolding in the country, most notably the introduction of the 4 labor codes, which herald a truly transformational shift in India's labor governance landscape. A natural question emerges: why were these reforms necessary? For decades, India relied on labor laws crafted during the pre-independence and early post-independence period, roughly between the 1930s and 1950s, when the economic landscape, industrial structure, and nature of work bore little resemblance to today's dynamic realities. While most advanced and emerging economies have, over time, streamlined and modernized their labor regulations, India continued to function under a fragmented and often outdated regime, dispersed across 29 central labor laws. These rigid provisions, many rooted in colonial-era thinking, struggled to accommodate the rapid evolution of technology, the diversification of employment forms, and the expanding aspirations of both workers and enterprises. The result was a system marked by high compliance burdens, overlapping mandates, and considerable uncertainty. The implementation of the 4 labor codes represents a long-awaited departure from this legacy. Effective from the 21st of November 2025, the Government of India has consolidated and rationalized the existing legal framework to ensure better wages, stronger social security, improved occupational safety, and enhanced welfare for India's workforce. These codes aspire to create a future-ready labor ecosystem that balances worker protection with operational flexibility, strengthens trust between employers and employees, and expands the scope of formal employment. Together, the reforms pave the way for a more resilient, competitive, and self-reliant India. This presentation will discuss in detail the Code on Wages, 2019 and the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, 2020. Slide 2. The Labor Reform Journey. India's labor ecosystem is presently witnessing one of the most consequential reforms in its modern history. In a decisive move to streamline, modernize, and rationalize the legal framework governing work and employment, the Government of India has consolidated 29 central labor legislations into 4 overarching and comprehensive codes: the Code on Wages, 2019, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, 2020, the Industrial Relations Code, 2020, and the Social Security Code, 2020. Together, these codes represent a landmark shift in the architecture of labor regulation across the country. This transformation reflects a deliberate effort to move beyond a fragmented, often outdated set of laws developed in a vastly different economic era. By unifying these legislations, the new framework aims to enhance clarity, reduce procedural complexity, and establish a more predictable and transparent environment for both workers and employers. Equally significant is the reform's emphasis on strengthening social protection, ensuring safer workplaces, fostering harmonious industrial relations, and promoting universal wage security. The 4 labor codes collectively mark a historic transition toward a more coherent, future-ready labor regime, one that aligns with global standards, supports economic competitiveness, and upholds the dignity, welfare, and rights of India's diverse workforce. Slide 3. Category 1 and 2. Category I, Code on Wages, 2019. The Code on Wages, 2019 marks a pivotal effort to rationalize and modernize India's wage governance framework by consolidating 4 key legislations: the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, and the Payment of Bonus Act. Previously, these laws operated independently, each regulating distinct facets of wage determination, payment modalities, and bonus entitlements. This fragmentation often resulted in compliance complexities, overlapping provisions, and inconsistent enforcement across industries. The new code replaces this dispersed system with a single, coherent framework applicable to all sectors, formal and informal alike. By expanding the coverage of minimum wages to every employee, the code enhances wage equity and ensures that the principle of universal minimum earnings is upheld nationwide. Furthermore, the streamlined wage definition reduces ambiguity and litigation, enabling both employers and workers to navigate their obligations with greater clarity. The establishment of uniform wage standards and improved compliance mechanisms fosters transparency and supports a more predictable labor market. Ultimately, the Code on Wages advances the objective of fair remuneration, timely wage disbursal, and enhanced protection for India's diverse workforce. Category 2. Industrial Relations Code, 2020. The Industrial Relations Code, 2020 amalgamates three major legislations: the Industrial Employment, Standing Orders, Act, 1946, the Industrial Disputes Act, 1947, and the Trade Unions Act, 1926, into a unified framework designed to strengthen industrial harmony and improve the ease of doing business. Historically, these separate laws governed conditions of service, dispute settlement, and union formation, often creating overlapping jurisdictions and procedural complexities. The new code integrates all aspects of industrial relations into one comprehensive structure, simplifying processes and enhancing both worker protection and managerial flexibility. It introduces modern features such as fixed-term employment, ensuring workers receive proportionate benefits while enabling industries to respond to dynamic market demands. Additionally, the code strengthens dispute resolution by institutionalizing mediation and improving the effectiveness of conciliation mechanisms. By promoting orderly collective bargaining, supporting stable employer-employee relations, and enabling faster resolution of conflicts, the Industrial Relations Code aims to build a more resilient, competitive, and future-ready industrial ecosystem. Slide 4. Category 3 and IV. Category 3. Safety and Working Conditions. The Safety and Working Conditions framework represents the most extensive consolidation effort within India's labor reforms, bringing together 13 diverse legislations under a single umbrella to create a coherent and modern structure. The Unified Code integrates major acts such as the Factories Act, Mines Act, Dock Workers Act, Contract Labor Act, Interstate Migrant Workers Act, and several others that historically operated in silos. These laws governed varied aspects of workplace safety, welfare, and employment conditions across sectors, often resulting in fragmented compliance requirements and inconsistent standards. The new framework expands coverage to additional domains, including working journalists, motor transport workers, sales promotion employees, bidi and cigar workers, and cine workers, thereby ensuring uniform safeguards for a wider spectrum of occupations. By harmonizing provisions, the code enhances regulatory simplicity, promotes safer working environments, and ensures better oversight of occupational health and welfare measures. It establishes clearer responsibilities for employers, strengthens inspection systems through technology-enabled mechanisms, and emphasizes humane working conditions, especially for vulnerable categories such as migrant and contract labor. Ultimately, this consolidation supports a more transparent, predictable, and equitable system that protects worker dignity while facilitating smoother industrial operations. Category IV. Social Security. The Social Security Framework consolidates 9 essential legislations into the Unified Social Security Code, 2020, creating a comprehensive safety net for India's workforce. The acts integrated include the EPF and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, ESIC Act, Maternity Benefit Act, Payment of Gratuity Act, and several others governing employee compensation, provident funds, and welfare for unorganized workers. This consolidation aims to universalize social protection by extending coverage not only to traditional employees but also to gig workers, platform workers, and those in the unorganized sector. The code streamlines contributions, simplifies administrative processes, and improves access to benefits such as health insurance, maternity entitlements, provident fund savings, and gratuity. It reinforces financial security for workers, promotes long-term welfare, and ensures timely support during contingencies like illness, maternity, workplace injury, and retirement. Through a more inclusive and efficient architecture, the Social Security Code strengthens India's commitment to social justice and human development, ensuring that every worker is protected across the life cycle of employment. Slide 5. Code on Wages 2019. The Code on Wages, 2019 signifies a transformative shift in India's approach to regulating compensation and wage-related rights. By consolidating 3 major legislations, the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, and the Payment of Bonus Act, the Code establishes a unified, simplified framework that applies to all workers, irrespective of industry, geographic location, or nature of employment. This universality marks a decisive departure from the earlier regime, where wage protection was limited to specific scheduled employments. A key feature of the code is its introduction of universal minimum wages, ensuring that every worker receives a legally mandated baseline income. The standardization of the definition of wages is another pivotal reform, reducing ambiguity and harmonizing calculations for provident fund contributions, gratuity, and bonus entitlements. The code also emphasizes timely payment of wages and reinforces gender-neutral remuneration, thereby promoting fairness and equity in the workplace. By expanding coverage, streamlining compliance, and enhancing transparency, the Code on Wages effectively strengthens the rights of workers while easing procedural burdens for employers. This shift supports a more predictable, efficient, and just wage governance system, aligning India's labor market with contemporary economic realities and international best practices. Slide 6. Expanded Applicability of Code on Wages 2019. The expanded applicability of the Code on Wages 2019 marks one of the most far-reaching reforms in India's wage governance framework. Under earlier legislation, namely the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, and the Payment of Bonus Act, coverage was limited, fragmented, and often restricted to narrowly defined categories of employment. These constraints created gaps in protection, excluded large segments of the workforce, and resulted in uneven wage standards across sectors. The Code on Wages fundamentally transforms this landscape by introducing universal applicability, ensuring that wage-related protections extend to all employees in both the organized and unorganized sectors. Unlike the previous Minimum Wages Act, which applied only to notified scheduled employments, the Code mandates minimum wages for every worker, thereby promoting inclusivity and safeguarding the basic earnings of millions who were previously outside the legal ambit. Similarly, the Payment of Wages Act earlier protected only employees earning below a specified wage ceiling. Under the new framework, all employees, including supervisors and managerial staff, are entitled to timely wage disbursal and protection against unlawful deductions. This eliminates artificial wage thresholds and enhances fairness across employment hierarchies. In the case of bonus entitlements, the earlier Payment of Bonus Act applied solely to establishments with 20 or more employees, leaving smaller units outside the mandatory coverage. The Code on Wages retains the 20-employee threshold but introduces clearer definitions, streamlined exemptions, and harmonized compliance requirements. This rationalization reduces ambiguity, improves enforcement, and offers greater clarity to employers while safeguarding workers' rights. Overall, the expanded applicability advances the principle of universal wage justice. By standardizing protections across sectors, income levels, and types of employment, the Code strengthens labor equity and formalizes wage practices throughout the economy. It represents a decisive move toward a more inclusive, transparent, and modern wage governance regime aligned with contemporary labor market needs. Slide 7. Contract labor refined and employer responsibility expanded. Contract labor redefined. The Code on Wages 2019 introduces a clear and comprehensive definition of contract labor, addressing a long-standing gap in earlier legislations such as the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, and the Payment of Bonus Act, which had no explicit definition. This ambiguity often led to inconsistent interpretations and misclassification of workers engaged through contractors. Under the new framework, the Code distinctly identifies contract labor while excluding regular employees of contractors who work exclusively for the contractor's own establishment. This clarity ensures that workers deployed at client work sites are not wrongfully categorized, thereby safeguarding their rightful entitlements. The Code also mandates that contract labor engaged through contractors receive appropriate wage increments and social benefits, preventing exploitation and fostering a more transparent wage disbursement system. By refining the definition, the reform strengthens compliance, enhances accountability, and protects the rights of one of the most vulnerable segments of India's workforce. Employer responsibility expanded. The Code on Wages significantly broadens the definition of employer, addressing the limitations of earlier laws, particularly the Payment of Bonus Act, which lacked specific provisions establishing employer responsibility for contract labor bonus payments. The expanded definition now includes heads of government departments, persons or authorities managing industrial establishments, managers of factories as defined under the Factories Act, and designated representatives of deceased employers. This comprehensive approach ensures that those exercising control over workplace operations are legally accountable for wage-related obligations, including bonus disbursement. The reform has critical implications. It strengthens protection for contract labor, ensures that payment responsibilities cannot be evaded through vague managerial arrangements, and eliminates loopholes that previously allowed avoidance of statutory duties. By making employer accountability explicit and enforceable, the code promotes fairness, enhances transparency, and reinforces a culture of responsible management. Overall, the expanded definition empowers workers, reduces disputes, and supports a more equitable and compliant labor ecosystem. Slide 8. Equal pay for equal work. The principle of equal pay for equal work receives significant reinforcement under the Code on Wages, 2019, marking a major shift from the limited scope of the earlier Equal Remuneration Act. Previously, equal pay provisions were confined exclusively to preventing gender-based discrimination, ensuring that men and women performing similar work received comparable wages. While important, this narrow focus left out other forms of potential discrimination based on employment status, age, or other characteristics. The Code on Wages broadens this principle substantially by extending equal remuneration protections to all employees performing the same or similar work, irrespective of gender or any other distinguishing factor. This expansion represents a profound philosophical and regulatory shift. It ensures fairness across diverse categories of workers, permanent, contract, casual, part-time, or temporary, by mandating that comparable roles with similar skill, effort, and responsibility be compensated equitably. The reform promotes a more inclusive and just labor environment by eliminating wage disparities that may arise from organizational hierarchies or employment classifications. It also contributes to enhanced workforce morale, reduced grievances, and improved trust between employers and employees. Overall, the strengthened provision advances wage equity, aligns India's labor framework with global best practices, and reinforces the constitutional commitment to equality and fairness in the world of work. Slide 9. Gender discrimination provisions refined. The refined gender discrimination provisions under the new labor framework represent a decisive step toward fostering fairness, inclusivity, and dignity for women in the workplace. These reforms go beyond simply prohibiting discriminatory practices. They introduce a holistic set of protections and entitlements that strengthen women's participation in the labor force and ensure equal treatment across all sectors and establishments. At the core of these provisions is the legal prohibition of gender-based discrimination, which applies uniformly to recruitment, wages, conditions of work, and career advancement. This universal applicability signifies a substantial strengthening of earlier frameworks, eliminating loopholes that previously enabled subtle or structural barriers to persist. Complementing this prohibition is the reinforced mandate for equal pay for equal work, effectively eliminating wage gaps and ensuring that compensation is based solely on the nature of work performed, rather than gender or related factors. One of the most progressive reforms is the recognition of women's right to participate in night work across all industries, subject to their consent and supported by mandatory safety measures. This change expands opportunities for women in sectors such as manufacturing, logistics, IT services, and hospitality, fields where night operations are integral. It simultaneously places responsibility on employers to ensure secure transportation, workplace safety, and gender-sensitive infrastructure, fostering an environment where women can work confidently and without fear. The framework also strengthens women's collective voice through mandatory representation in grievance redressal committees. This ensures that workplace concerns, ranging from harassment to discriminatory practices, are heard, addressed, and resolved with sensitivity and fairness. This inclusion enhances accountability and promotes a culture of trust and transparency. A significant refinement is the expanded family definition, which now includes parents-in-law under the entitlement umbrella for female employees. This change aligns with the lived realities of many women in India, especially those balancing professional responsibilities with caregiving roles in joint or extended families. By broadening coverage, the reform supports women's socio-economic stability and acknowledges their familial contributions. Taken together, these refined provisions create a comprehensive framework that protects women from discrimination, promotes equal opportunities, and strengthens institutional support systems. They signify a transformative shift toward gender equity, fostering workplaces that are safer, fairer, and more empowering for women across India's evolving labor landscape. Slide 10. Worker classification changes and minimum wage revision timeline. Worker classification changes. The Code on Wages, 2019 introduces critical reforms in how workers are defined and classified, addressing long-standing inconsistencies in previous legislations. Earlier, the Payment of Wages Act applied only to employees earning up to 24,000 rupees per month, while the Minimum Wages Act restricted its protections to notified scheduled employments, leaving numerous categories uncovered. Similarly, the Payment of Bonus Act applied only to directly employed workers, excluding large sections of contract labor from essential entitlements. Under the new code, worker classification is both broadened and clarified to ensure equitable protection across the workforce. The definition of worker now excludes only those in supervisory roles earning above 18,000 rupees per month, or a notified amount, ensuring a larger segment of the labor force remains eligible for wage-related safeguards. The definition of employee is also expanded to include all workers performing managerial, administrative, operational, or supervisory duties, thereby harmonizing coverage across establishments. Importantly, the code harmonizes diverse definitions spread across earlier acts, ensuring uniformity for wage computation, provident fund contributions, gratuity, and bonus calculations. This rationalization minimizes disputes related to classification and strengthens worker protections by ensuring that employers cannot misinterpret roles to avoid statutory responsibilities. Overall, the refined classification framework promotes fairness, reduces ambiguity, and aligns labor governance with modern workforce structures. Minimum wage revision timeline. The minimum wage revision mechanism under the Code on Wages marks a substantial shift from previous practices. Earlier legislation mandated wage revision, at least once every 5 years, a phrase that allowed considerable discretion and often led to delayed revisions that failed to keep pace with inflation and economic fluctuations. The code introduces a mandatory minimum wage revision every 5 years, creating a clear, time-bound obligation for governments to review and update minimum wage rates. This ensures that wage floors remain aligned with economic conditions, cost of living, and workforce needs. Additionally, the code mandates more frequent adjustments through cost of living allowances or variable dearness allowance, VDA, which may be revised semi-annually or annually, depending on consumer price index movements. This structured revision timeline protects workers from wage stagnation and provides predictability for both employees and employers. While the approach is more linguistically precise, it also strengthens accountability by ensuring wages evolve in step with inflation and economic demands. The refined mechanism enhances wage security, promotes income stability, and supports a more responsive and modern wage governance system across India's labor landscape. Slide 11. The new definition of wages. The new definition of wages under the Code on Wages brings a unified and standardized approach to a term that was previously interpreted differently across multiple labor laws. This change aims to remove ambiguity, streamline compliance, and create a more transparent structure for both employers and employees. Under the new framework, inclusions within wages consist of all remuneration expressed in monetary terms. This covers basic pay, dearness allowance, allowances, reimbursements, and various benefits directly related to employment. However, the code also specifies several exclusions such as bonuses, conveyance allowances, HRA, overtime, commissions, employer PF contributions, retirement-related payouts, and gratuity. These components, though part of the overall compensation package, are not counted as wages for statutory purposes. A critical aspect of the new definition is the 50% rule. The total excluded components cannot exceed 50% of the employee's total remuneration. If exclusions go beyond this limit, the excess amount will be added back and treated as wages. This ensures that employers maintain a balanced salary structure and do not disproportionately shift compensation into allowances to reduce statutory liabilities. Overall, this redefinition significantly impacts salary structuring, increasing the base for PF and other social security benefits while potentially reducing take-home pay, but strengthening long-term financial security. Slide 12. National minimum wage, a game changer. The introduction of a national minimum wage, also referred to as the national floor wage, marks a major step toward ensuring fair and equitable pay for workers across India. Previously, under the Minimum Wages Act, states independently determined their minimum wage levels, resulting in substantial variations and regional disparities. The Code on Wages introduces a revolutionary change by empowering the central government to set a national minimum wage that can either be applied uniformly across the country or adjusted for different geographical regions based on cost of living differences. A key provision is the critical constraint placed on state governments: they cannot set their minimum wages below the national floor wage. This creates a protective wage floor that benefits workers nationwide, preventing exploitation and suppressive wage practices. At the same time, states retain the flexibility to set higher wages depending on local economic conditions, ensuring that the system remains responsive and adaptive. By reducing interstate wage disparities and preventing a competitive race to the bottom, the national minimum wage promotes balanced economic growth, improves labor standards, and strengthens worker welfare. It represents a transformative reform aimed at fostering fairness, protecting livelihoods, and supporting inclusive development across India. Slide 13. Bonus disqualification, final settlement and extended claim period. The reforms introduced under the Code on Wages mark a substantial shift towards strengthening worker protection, streamlining processes, and closing long-standing gaps in earlier wage legislation. Three major areas: bonus disqualification, final settlement timelines, and the claims period, have undergone significant changes that aim to enhance fairness, accountability, and transparency in employer-employee relations. Bonus disqualification expanded. Under the older Payment of Bonus Act, an employee could be disqualified from receiving a bonus only for reasons such as fraud, violent behavior, theft, or sabotage. There were no explicit provisions addressing misconduct related to sexual harassment, which left a critical gap in disciplinary accountability. The Code on Wages expands these disqualification conditions by including sexual harassment as a valid ground for withholding bonus payments. By doing so, it aligns workplace compensation systems with modern workplace ethics and reinforces the seriousness of maintaining safe and respectful work environments. This addition also empowers employers to take stronger action against misconduct without ambiguity. Final settlement timeline. Timely full and final settlement has been a long-standing concern for workers leaving employment. The Payment of Wages Act provided a 2-day timeline only in cases of dismissal or retrenchment, offering no clarity for employees who resigned. The Code on Wages resolves this inconsistency by establishing a uniform 2-day settlement timeline for all cases, whether dismissal, retrenchment, or resignation. This ensures that employees receive their rightful dues promptly, minimizing financial stress during employment transitions and promoting discipline and efficiency in employer payroll systems. Extended claims period. Under previous laws, the claim period for wage-related grievances was limited, 6 months under the Minimum Wages Act and 1 year under the Payment of Wages and Bonus Acts. These restricted timelines often prevented workers from seeking justice, especially when they were unaware of their rights or faced barriers in filing claims. The Code on Wages extends this period to a uniform 3 years, offering a more realistic window for workers to recognize violations, gather necessary documents, and file claims. This extension significantly enhances access to justice and strengthens wage enforcement mechanisms. Slide 14. Inspection Transformation and Strengthened Penalties. The Code on Wages introduces a transformative shift in how workplace inspections and compliance are managed, replacing an adversarial system with a more collaborative and transparent framework. Under the old system, inspections were largely physical and enforcement-driven, often perceived as rigid and punitive. Inspectors operated within restricted geographical jurisdictions and typically followed manual procedures, leading to inconsistent practices and documentation challenges. The new system represents a structural and philosophical overhaul. Inspectors are now redesignated as inspector-cum-facilitators, highlighting their dual role in both enforcing the law and guiding establishments toward compliance. The introduction of web-based electronic inspection systems enhances transparency, reduces subjectivity, and promotes uniformity across regions. Facilitators are expected to help employers understand compliance requirements, maintain proper documentation, and adopt corrective measures proactively. This marks an important shift from a punitive approach to a supportive one, encouraging a healthier employer-employee dynamic and ensuring that labor standards are upheld more consistently. Complementing this improved inspection framework are the strengthened penalties under the Code on Wages. Earlier penalty structures under various wage laws were inconsistent and often insufficient to deter violations. Penalties ranged widely, and enforcement was fragmented, leading to gaps in protecting workers' rights. The new code addresses this by introducing a clear, graded penalty system designed to ensure stronger deterrence. For the first offense, fines now range from 50,000 rupees to 100,000 rupees, depending on the severity and nature of non-compliance. Repeat offenses attract significantly higher penalties and can even lead to imprisonment, emphasizing the government's uncompromising stance on wage-related violations. These enhanced penalties ensure that employers take compliance seriously and that workers receive the protection they are legally entitled to. Together, the inspection reforms and strengthened penalties create a more efficient, transparent, and worker-centric regulatory environment, aligning labor governance with modern standards and improving trust in the compliance ecosystem. Slide 15. Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, OSHWC, Code 2020 marks a significant milestone in India's labor reform agenda by consolidating 13 diverse laws into a single, comprehensive framework. This unified code governs workplace safety, health standards, and working conditions across a wide range of sectors, including factories, mines, plantations, construction, transportation, and various other establishments. By bringing these previously fragmented regulations under one umbrella, the code aims to simplify compliance, enhance worker protection, and promote a safer working environment. A key objective of the OSHWC code is to modernize and streamline occupational safety norms in line with evolving industrial practices. It strengthens provisions related to health checks, hazard management, welfare facilities, and working hours. Clear responsibilities are laid down for employers to ensure safe infrastructure, preventive measures, and hygienic conditions. The code also emphasizes the use of technology for registration and inspections, promoting transparency and efficiency. For workers, the code enhances security by ensuring better welfare amenities, uniform safety standards, and improved working conditions across sectors. Overall, the OSHWC Code 2020 represents the most extensive consolidation in labor regulation, aiming to safeguard worker well-being while enabling smoother compliance for employers in a rapidly changing industrial landscape. Slide 16. Healthcare and Safety Improvements. The recent reforms in labor laws introduce significant enhancements in healthcare and safety provisions, aiming to create a healthier, more secure, and worker-friendly environment across industries. One of the most impactful changes is the emphasis on preventive healthcare. Earlier, employers were not legally required to provide periodic health checkups for their workers. This often led to late detection of health issues, especially for employees engaged in physically demanding or hazardous occupations. Under the new provisions, employers must now ensure that all workers above the age of 40 receive a free annual health checkup. This promotes a culture of preventive care, encourages early diagnosis, and helps reduce long-term health risks among the workforce. Another major improvement relates to timely payment of wages. Previously, there was no mandatory compliance mechanism ensuring that wages were paid on time, leaving workers vulnerable to financial instability and stress. Under the new framework, employers are required to pay wages promptly, ensuring regular income flow. This not only strengthens financial security but also improves morale, reduces workplace stress, and supports overall productivity. Together, these reforms prioritize worker well-being by integrating preventive healthcare and financial stability into the workplace ecosystem, ultimately fostering a more responsible and supportive work environment. Slide 17. Expanded ESIC coverage across India. The expansion of Employees State Insurance Corporation, ESIC, coverage across India represents a major advancement in strengthening social security for workers. Under the earlier system, ESIC benefits were limited to specific notified areas and select industries. Establishments with fewer than 10 employees were largely excluded, and workers engaged in hazardous processes often lacked uniform access to mandatory ESIC protection. This fragmented approach left many workers, especially those in small units and remote regions, without essential healthcare and insurance benefits. The new framework significantly broadens ESIC's reach by making coverage pan-India. ESIC benefits are now available across all regions, irrespective of location. For establishments employing fewer than 10 workers, coverage is voluntary. However, it becomes mandatory for any establishment with even a single employee engaged in hazardous activities. This ensures that frontline and high-risk workers receive timely medical care, insurance benefits, and protection against occupational hazards. The impact of this reform is transformative. It brings millions of workers under a unified social protection system, ensuring access to comprehensive healthcare services, disability benefits, maternity coverage, and financial support during medical emergencies. By extending ESIC to smaller establishments and unserved regions, the reform promotes inclusive welfare, uplifts worker security, and strengthens India's commitment to universal social protection. Slide 18, Simplified Compliance Framework. The Simplified Compliance Framework introduced under recent labor reforms marks a major shift toward reducing complexity and promoting ease of doing business. Earlier, employers had to navigate a maze of requirements, multiple registrations for different labor laws, separate licenses for various operations, and numerous returns filed across diverse statutes. This fragmented system created significant administrative burdens, increased compliance costs, and often led to unintentional lapses due to its time-consuming and cumbersome nature. With the new labor reforms, compliance processes have been unified and streamlined. Employers now benefit from a single registration applicable to all major labor laws, eliminating the need for repeated paperwork. A pan-India single license further simplifies operations, allowing businesses to function seamlessly across states without seeking multiple approvals. Additionally, a single consolidated return replaces multiple statutory filings, making monitoring and adherence far more efficient. These reforms significantly reduce administrative load, minimize redundancy, and enhance transparency in regulatory processes. By simplifying compliance, the framework encourages higher formalization, supports business growth, and ensures better adherence to labor standards. Ultimately, the Simplified Compliance Framework promotes a more business-friendly environment while maintaining accountability and protecting worker rights. Slide 19, Appointment Letter Made Statutory. The introduction of a statutory requirement for appointment letters marks a significant step toward formalizing employment relationships in India's labor landscape. Earlier, while many organized sector employers issued written appointment letters as a matter of practice, there was no universal legal obligation to do so. This left large sections of workers, particularly in the unorganized and semi-organized sectors, without written proof of employment, often resulting in ambiguity regarding job roles, wages, and service conditions. Under the new labor code, all employers are now legally mandated to provide written appointment letters to their employees. This requirement brings much-needed clarity and structure to employment arrangements. Workers gain clear documentation of their terms of employment, including wages, working hours, job responsibilities, and leave entitlements. This transparency helps reduce disputes, prevents misunderstandings, and provides crucial evidence in the event of conflicts or grievances. For employers, formal appointment letters offer protection by clearly defining obligations and expectations, thereby reducing the scope for litigation and compliance risks. The reform also elevates workforce management practices in the unorganized sector, nudging them closer to organized sector standards. Overall, making appointment letters statutory enhances accountability, strengthens employee rights, and promotes a more structured and trustworthy employment environment across industry. Slide 20. The Road Ahead, Implementation and Impact. The introduction of the 4 labor codes represents the most ambitious labor reform undertaken in India in over 70 years. While the codes promise modernization, simplification, and improved worker protection, their success will depend heavily on the quality and pace of implementation. A smooth transition from older labor laws to this unified framework requires coordinated effort from governments, employers, and workers. A key requirement is the timely issuance of rules and notifications. Although the central government has framed its rules, state governments must finalize and notify their respective provisions for the codes to come into full effect. Clear, Well-structured rules are essential to avoid confusion and ensure uniformity across states. Without this alignment, the benefits of consolidation may remain unrealized. Stakeholder education is equally crucial. Employers, workers, unions, HR professionals, and labor officials need comprehensive training on the new provisions. The shift from fragmented legislation to integrated codes means that many stakeholders must unlearn older practices and adapt to new compliance systems. Effective communication, workshops, and government outreach will play a vital role in promoting correct implementation. The next critical pillar is digital infrastructure. The codes envision unified registration systems, electronic inspections, and digitized returns, all of which require robust digital platforms. Investing in user-friendly systems that support e-governance, automated reporting, and transparent inspection mechanisms will reduce administrative burdens and enhance compliance efficiency. Continuous monitoring and adjustment will also determine the long-term success of these reforms. As industries adopt the new framework, challenges and ambiguities are likely to emerge. Governments must remain open to feedback and willing to refine rules to ensure clarity and fairness. Such adaptive governance will help maintain the delicate balance between worker protection and business flexibility. Ultimately, the impact of the labor codes will depend on how effectively they bridge the gap between legislative intent and practical implementation. If executed well, they have the potential to transform India's labor landscape by extending protections to millions of workers who were previously excluded. At the same time, simplified compliance processes can create a more business-friendly environment, fostering investment, formalization, and economic growth. The reforms present a historic opportunity, a chance to build a labor ecosystem that is fair, efficient, and future-ready, benefiting both workers and employers alike. Well, this ends the part 1 of this presentation, and tomorrow we shall move to discuss part 2, that is confined to Industrial Relations Code 2020 and Social Security Code 2020.